Room 237 is a Jumperscape audio production. You've entered a place of fear and dread. Welcome to Room 237.
Hello and welcome to Room 237. It's the season finale.
Woo! Season finale!
Oh, man. What a day. What are we doing?
So today we watched our namesake movie, The Shining.
Boom, boom, boom,
Premiered in 1980. I didn't realize that's what you were doing. Premiered in 1980. Directed by Stanley Kubrick and starring Shelley Duvall, Jack Nicholson, and Danny Lloyd. Hello, I'm Shelley Duvall.
So this is a hard one to tackle, and we've decided on our approach because this is the most analyzed movie to ever exist. And I don't think that is a bold-faced lie. I think that is the truth. There are entire documentaries about dissecting this movie.
Yeah.
One of them is called Room 237, which is kind of unfortunate.
Yeah.
But
That is true.
So Ashton has never seen this movie.
I have not. And I have not watched any analyzing of this, listened to it. Like, I've basically completely avoided The Shining other than just TikTok references.
Well, yeah, you just kind of know the cultural osmosis.
Yeah, the cultural osmosis stuff. Like I know Red Room.
And here's Johnny.
And randomly that one monologue he goes on.
The Darling Light of My Life. That one?
Yes, yeah. That I started quoting while we were watching the movie.
Yeah, that one's pretty famous. This was a movie that I used to watch like 2 times a year minimum for a long time because it's really good. But I made an effort to not rewatch it since we started this podcast, and before that it had been at least a year. So it's been at least 2 years since I've watched this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was gonna kind of research up a little bit, see some of the theories, kind of get some talking points ready, but I didn't want to do that. So I just decided maybe just going in, hadn't even thought about the movie in a long time, and trying to see what I get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that way we can have a wholly original. Now, when I say wholly original, I might just recall things and interpretations and say them. So there's your possible accidental plagiarism.
And I don't know any of these things. So if I say something that sounds like something another person has said, I made that up in my own brain.
Yeah.
So I'm not plagiarizing. That just came from inside my head.
So rest assured, there's not going to be any Wendy theory. There's not going to be any Stanley Kubrick fake moon landing theory. Or any of the other really wacky, zany theories.
Okay, we'll talk about that later. The only
I just said we weren't going to talk about it.
The only thing I can see what that might be moving my perception is that when I was doing the trivia, I learned how much Stephen King hates this movie.
That is also kind of a cultural osmosis thing, because it's very well known that Stephen King really, really hates this movie.
So if that comes out in any of my opinions, I mean, it sucks.
See, the reasons that Stephen King hates this movie, I understand them.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at it as an adaptation, it's actually not a very good adaptation. But that's why when you talk about this movie, you don't really call it Stephen King's The Shining. You call it Stephen
You call it Stanley. You call it Kubrick's.
You call it Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
Yeah.
That is the main, like, that's kind of just become part of the lingo with this movie. Is the movie and the book, while mirror each other in terms of like story beats,
Right.
are completely different things.
Right.
And I have not read the book.
I think I tried to start it. There was a point in time where I read a lot. And I picked up Stephen King because I was like, oh, I am a complicated person. I am in high school now. And so I read Carrie. I liked Carrie, but like some books are just so slow. And it is so hard. There's so many details.
Yeah.
There are too many details. I can't. If you talk about a bush for more than like a sentence, I give up. Like,
I mean, the only Stephen King I've ever read was It, and some chapters will just be going on and on.
It's just
and on
point blank period uncomfortable.
Yeah. But so that's basically a disclaimer. Neither of us have read the book. So
Yeah.
I'm going to avoid
There's
any opinions on Stephen King's version.
And other than maybe mentioning how he doesn't like the adaptation, but yeah, like we don't know the book, so we can't really compare and contrast.
Yeah.
But what's funny is Nicholson and Duvall also kind of hate the reception of this movie because all of the credit goes to Kubrick. All of it. None of the crew, none of the actors really. Like, it all goes to Kubrick. Like, when this movie comes out, it's, this is amazing. The directing's amazing.
Well, this movie was panned when it came out. This movie was not received well.
Well,
Shelley Duvall got a Razzie, I'm pretty sure.
Jeez.
I can't say that for certain because I'm just bringing it out of my memory banks, but we can maybe fact check that later. But
yeah, but in general, they both hate the reception of this movie because almost no thought goes into how hard the actors worked, how hard the crew worked,
how hard they were pushed.
Both of them say this is one of the worst, or like not worst, but hardest jobs they've taken in their careers. And Jack Nicholson specifically considers Shelley's performance to be the hardest performance an actress has ever taken on.
Yeah, I mean, the infamous stairway scene, like, I don't know the exact number, but they shot that for a ridiculous amount of takes to the point where it was on purpose to get Shelley worn down and
kind of make her go crazy.
Yeah, basically.
Because she suffered from a bunch of like nervous exhaustion and stuff throughout filming and got sick and started like her hair started falling out. So that's really not good.
And that's why it's like I pseudo wanted to dedicate this episode to Shelley Duvall because she's recently passed away. But I know that a lot of her issues that she had later in life started with this process.
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair to blame this movie for it.
No.
But I think that her confidence was probably shattered after this movie.
Oh, I bet. But we can still say like her performance absolutely
amazing.
Is what pulls this movie along.
Like your main cast, Jack Nicholson, Danny Lloyd, Shelley Duvall, and Scatman all do amazing.
Amazing.
But the amount of heavy work that she has to do, like she's for a whole like third of this movie, just inconsolably panicked.
Yes, and even in the first half, like it's like it definitely reflects the family dynamics we see here. But Shelley totally is the rock in this movie. She is the thing that is keeping you engaged, keeping you watching, and moving the story along. So, you could still kind of devote this episode to her just on her performance.
And I think that's one of the things I will bring up in Stephen King's opinions of this movie is Stephen King criticized, one of his biggest criticisms was Shelley Duvall's performance and saying that she played the character weak and like helpless. And I could not disagree more.
I don't think she seems helpless at all.
She has very reasonable reactions to what's going on.
In fact, she's the only one who's actually doing the caretaking of the hotel.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's a reasonable complaint. Now, I do know that he criticized Jack Nicholson.
Which I think there are criticisms.
Yeah.
I was going to get into that when we got into the plot.
Yeah, we'll get into it in a little bit because I also have it written somewhere else in my notes because I want to get into it more with the plot.
Because don't get me wrong, he does great.
Yeah.
But he's just Jack.
Yeah.
He's being Jack Nicholson.
Well, shall we get into it?
Well, how many dicks would you give this movie out of 10? Dick Halloran, of course.
Oh, yeah. Why don't you go first?
This is a 10 dicks out of 10 movie for me. This is pretty close to a perfect movie in my brain.
I'd give it 8.5 dicks out of 10.
I mean, that's fair. I have a very basic opinion of this movie in that it's amazing, but I understand like kind of the overrated feeling that a lot of people have about it.
I mean, it's a well put together and a well made horror movie. And I'm not saying that it's not. I would not say that it's a 10 out of 10 perfect movie though.
That's fair.
In fact, I noticed many things wrong with this movie.
Well, we'll get into them.
Yes, we will.
We'll see maybe if we agree or disagree, or if
and it might be just because I know that Kubrick is supposed to be super particular about things, but things were not as particular as I've seen in other movies. So that's maybe just my brain.
See if it's things you noticed and thought were mistakes that weren't.
We'll see.
Because there's a lot of purposeful inconsistencies and unreliable narrating.
Okay.
But we'll get into it. This movie has one of my favorite openings in a movie ever. The sweeping shots of the Rockies with Diaz Irae in the background
we love Diaz Irae.
Is so good as Jack is driving up to his job interview at the Overlook. It really kind of sets the vibes, for lack of a better term. But we're following Jack, and one thing interesting I noticed is you don't really get a good look at Jack's face. As he's going into the interview. I don't know what the meaning of that is or what, but
here's where, like, I guess this is supposed to be Jack as like normal.
That's what I was gonna get into,
and
is that he's already scary.
He's already kind of insane, and that's where I read Stephen King like has the most problem with that, is that Jack's not supposed to be a crazy person. Like,
he's supposed to just be like a flawed but decent man.
Yes. Like, and you can see that as we go through the rest of the film. We're in the spoiler section, so I might as well. Like, he hurt his son when he was under the influence of alcohol. And so they say they don't drink alcohol anymore. He stopped drinking after he hurt his son. Like, he is a flawed individual for sure, but he tries to correct himself, I guess, and like be a generally good person.
And I think part of the problem is I think it is just kind of the way Jack Nicholson is. Like, the way he carries himself, the way he speaks. Like, he kind of just has that smile. And his smile is so, like, connotated in, you're scary.
Right, but it's even just the way he talks about things a little bit.
It's so formal. It's weird. I know it's a job interview, but like even later when they're doing the tour of the hotel, like I just noticed like there's kind of an unsettlingness with how like routine everything feels.
Yes.
I don't know how to really describe it.
And it's just like, I don't know. It definitely, after I read it and then was watching the movie, I was like, oh, huh? Like, why is he already crazy? Why is he already insane? But what's funny about that is where I read this is to make his version, Stephen King's version of the movie, he had to sign an agreement because Kubrick still had the rights to his book. And the only thing he had to do was say that he wouldn't criticize Kubrick's movie anymore. The only thing he could still say publicly about the movie is that he didn't like how Jack Nicholson played Jack. That's the only thing he was allowed to. They were like, and one stipulation, you can say Jack Nicholson was bad. We don't care about that.
Well,
but if
did
you
that
want
deal
to
expire because he still talks about how
I
much
think
he
it
doesn't like
did.
The
Well,
Shining to this day.
it was just to get his rights back while Kubrick still had them. So
Yeah.
Kubrick's rights would have expired by now.
I mean, yeah, he passed away.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
And oh god, I'm gonna try not to talk about the Stephen King miniseries. It's not very good.
That sucks.
There's one detail about the book and the miniseries is Jack doesn't use an axe. He uses a croquet mallet.
I love that, actually.
It's so
very
silly.
Heathers.
It's so silly.
It's very Heathers. But it's also, if you think about it in the context of where they're at, like, that makes sense. It'd be something he could grab easily. It'd be
fire
something.
axe makes sense too.
I mean, yeah, but like, I don't know. It almost makes him seem more violent and more insane to be using a croquet mallet instead. Because you got to be way more violent with a croquet mallet to get it.
I mean, I would imagine, but
I'm just saying.
I think it's just because in the scenes in the miniseries where he is swinging around, like I just kind of picture cartoon sound effects when it hits things.
Oh.
Like a croquet mallet, it's just they're silly looking.
It evidently wasn't done right, because if you do it in a way that takes this regular everyday object and makes it into a weapon, then it's really scary rather than comical. So obviously,
there's also a fire hose with teeth.
I love that.
But so kind of, but not really. But the first third of this movie is almost entirely exposition.
Yeah.
But I mean, what movie isn't? First half is heavy on the exposition.
Yeah. Especially something based on Stephen King work.
Because I mean, Stephen King is like 90% exposition.
He likes world building, and
Yeah.
you can't blame him for that.
And the first kind of we get a couple little hints in this interview. One, there is the classic, well, this isn't in the interview, but this is like just kind of some establishing things. The classic Indian burial ground cliche.
What does that even have to do with this movie?
I don't know. It was just the thing that people believed was haunted.
What? Why? Was that in the source material?
I do not know if it was in the source material.
We'll have to figure that out.
I believe it was.
That sounds like something
Stephen King loved using like native like curses and stuff. I just think of I go right to it with the ritual of Chud.
Yeah, and in Pet Cemetery, like I figured it was in the source material, but
I think it's because you're telling American horror stories and you have to try and tie back to some kind of mythology. The only thing you really have to go by is like native traditions and native like creatures and monsters.
Right, which is fair, but and I mean, I guess I haven't read the source material. It might seem more like a impersonal supernatural entity doing more of this stuff. I feel like in this story, though, that is presented by the movie, you don't need that outward supernatural energy.
Yeah, I mean, it is just basically a throwaway line.
I know, and it just is like, why even do it? Why even do it?
But the other important exposition is what happened to the caretaker, Mr. Grady, in 1970.
Mm-hmm.
And, the manager, his name's Mr. Ullman, is explaining, he's like, oh, before you accept, I always want to say this story just so you're aware. Because some people back out after they hear this. And he tells the story of Mr. Grady, Delbert Grady. He seemed like a decent man. And so casually just like, he kind of had a mental breakdown. And he chopped up his 2 daughters and his wife and stacked them in one of the rooms. And then he blew out his brains. Both barrels.
Yay.
It's very nice, yeah.
Yeah.
And that doesn't seem to bother Jack too much. He's just like, my wife will love it. She's kind of a horror fanatic.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that until just this moment.
But kind of intercut with all this, we're seeing Danny and Wendy living in their little house.
Yeah.
And this is when we meet Tony. And Tony is the little boy that lives in his mouth.
Tony.
Mrs. Torrance.
Mrs. Torrance. Red rum.
If I'm not mistaken, in the source material, Tony is literally just like a floating teenager. At least that's what he is in the mini. All of my knowledge of the novel is coming from basically the miniseries and a few like differences things that I've read. And one of them is he's basically just a floating teenager like, hey, Dan.
Like a real imaginary friend.
Yeah, kind of.
It's a little less creepy, but it makes more sense, I guess.
But I kind of like this movie implies that Danny's, that Tony
it's just Danny's shine.
It's just Danny's shine. He just doesn't doesn't understand it.
Right. I do like that though too.
And I can't wait to watch Dr. Sleep now. I love that movie. Mike Flanagan's the GOAT, and Ewan McGregor's really good. Random tangent, whoopsie. But Tony's trying to tell Danny that
the hotel's bad.
The hotel bad. Because Danny already knows that his dad got the job because shine.
And can you tell what like Kubrick's favorite thing he shot for this movie might be? Could you maybe tell?
Mirror shots?
No, I think it's literally that blood shot that took them like 9 fucking days to build and stuff. The blood elevators. If they used that shot one more time, I would have been like, okay, I get it. I get it. I see it. Okay.
Well, use it just enough because I love the blood elevator. But yeah, I was gonna get to the blood elevator. Danny's like, why not hotel? Why bad? And then we see blood elevator.
Yeah, we get little glimpses of what we're gonna see in the hotel.
Basically, just the blood elevator and the Grady twins just kind of standing there.
Yeah. Hi, Kitty.
Kitty's back. But another weird novel difference is at least in the miniseries, because I'm just gonna say that because I've not read the novel, so I'm not gonna say this is in the novel if it's not. But to my knowledge, Stephen King adapted everything in his miniseries as close to the novel as possible. Wendy just knows he's psychic. Like, and Wendy just like comes up to him. This is how we're introduced to them. Did your dad get the job? Yes, he did. Yay!
That's kind of fun.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's just like, it's not my brand. It's a little
less spooky.
It's a little too and that's the thing. Stephen King's biggest criticism of this movie is that it's too cold, which is funny because it's literally winter. But that it's too cold and there's not like enough like hopefulness and like happiness like around the story or at the end of the story.
Right.
But when I just look at like the general outline of what this story is, I feel like it's more of a cold story than a warm one.
Yeah,
But that's just me.
that's a fair criticism.
But this is where after he sees the elevator, he has I don't know, like I guess a seizure or he just passes out. And he's getting checked up. He just gets checked up by the doctor, and she's asking him all the, did you see flashing lights? Kind of questions. But when the doctor's talking to Wendy privately, that's when we hear the story of Jack came home drunk, and Danny had all of his dad's school papers, because he was a teacher, strung out all over the floor. And Jack yanked him up by the arm to get him away from the papers and dislocated his shoulder.
Yeah.
And that's why Jack is now off the wagon. Or on the wagon. I forget which one it is. No longer drinking.
Yes.
Obviously, alcoholism is a huge theme in this story as well.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of a lot of this story is kind of a Stephen King self-report,
which makes sense.
And maybe that's why he doesn't like how Jack was played so much, because he imagined himself as
because I mean,
Jack.
if you think of how he wrote this, which the story basically is, he was staying in the Stanley Hotel and had a dream of his kid like running through the halls and stuff, and came up with the entire story of The Shining there, and then continued to write it in the hotel.
Yeah.
It makes sense that this one's very personal to him. Makes sense that it's a very self-reflective story for him. Because it literally is. It's just what he was doing. He was in this hotel writing, and yeah.
And I think that's kind of why I just kind of give Mr. King a pass on his opinions, because I think they do border on a little harsh at some points, because this is probably his most important and his most personal work. But that's neither here nor there. But the glimpses we get of them as a, normal, quote unquote, family kind of do show the dynamic, and that Jack isn't really meant to be the shiny man that like he's supposed to be in the novel.
Mm-hmm.
Because when they're driving up, you can just tell Jack seems annoyed to be with his own family already.
Well, and I think that's where that criticism really lies. But I thought maybe that was supposed to be a tell for us because he's been at the hotel.
It's already started,
It's already started, so I thought that was more supposed to be like, oh, there is already something wrong with this guy.
Yeah.
Because it seems like his wife and child do genuinely care for him, and like it seems like they're a normal family unit in the way that they communicate about him. But
that's why I'm not saying it's
it.
like abusive household already. I don't think that's the case. I think it might, at the very most, just already be kind of a off household, well, as far as Jack's concerned.
Yeah.
Like Jack is already feeling jaded, and he probably feels like a failure.
I think he feels like a bad father.
And he's probably at this point blaming everybody but himself.
Yes. I feel like that's what we're supposed to interpret about Jack, is that he, no matter what anyone else says, believes that he has failed at being a dad.
He failed at being a writer.
He failed at being a writer, and he just is at the point of blaming anyone else for that.
And this is when we get our little tour that doesn't really help you that much.
No.
Understand the geography of this building.
Yeah.
Which is very intentional, that you just don't understand what leads to where.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of to make you feel just as like isolated.
Yes.
If you maybe, but you get the lie of the land, at least with the important rooms in the movie. And they go through the Colorado room, which is like the big lounge like kind of lobby area.
Yeah.
We see the kitchen. That's where we meet Dick Halloran for the first time.
We love Dick.
Stay close, stranger. The room awaits you after these messages.
And I love the little detail of, he just starts calling him Doc. And when Wendy's like, how'd you know we call him that? And he's like, oh, I must have
heard you or something.
And then when that doesn't work, he's like, well, he just looks like a doc, like.
Well, if what happened next didn't happen, I would have just been like, oh, like he just somehow knew that and was just like, it was like a deja vu kind of thing.
Because while he's talking, the sound like goes out. And I love the way that sound is used in this movie.
It's used very effectively.
But the sound just kind of goes out and you can hear him like faintly still talking, but he looks over at Danny and goes, how about some ice cream, Doc? Like you could just hear it, like the spectral mind voice.
Yes.
And while Wendy and Jack go to continue the tour with Ullman, we get like, honestly, I think a scene that spells out the entire movie for you.
Mm-hmm.
This movie is analyzed a lot with what things mean, what places mean, what motivations are. But I feel like the scene where Dick explains the shine to Danny, he also kind of explains what the hotel is and how it works.
Yeah.
Because he's like, do you know how I talk to you? Do you know what that was? And like Danny's like, I'm not supposed to talk about it.
I'm not opposed to.
I'm not opposed to.
I'm not opposed to talk about it.
And he's like, well, who told you that? Tony, the little boy who lives in my mouth. But so he basically explains, that when he was a kid, he would have whole conversations with his grandma without so much as saying a word, and that she called it shining. And he said that lots of people shine.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them don't even know that they do it. Which I think shows that this whole family can shine. I think that's the only reason they even see anything in this movie.
Oh. That checks out.
And
which again means why Indian burial ground, but
yeah, I mean, it's the source of the energy, I guess. Because I don't think the local Boulder McDonald's has the same deal. Like, that's kind of a crude comparison, probably a little unfair, but anyway, he also explains that places are like people and that places can shine too.
Mm-hmm.
I think basically the Overlook is alive.
Oh, yeah.
And its only goal is to get more permanent residents.
Yes. Agreed.
And to draw more people to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me wonder how many of the ghost spirits we see are actually ghosts and which ones are just kind of created by the hotel.
Right.
Like, like the only ones I can really even think of would probably be Grady and his family.
And his family.
And just anyone else who actually died in the hotel.
Right.
Because that would beg the question, are there people who just die outside the hotel but have a connection to it, and that's where they spend their afterlife?
Well, and that's where you see that's where you can start drawing parallels to the Stanley Hotel, because that place is like a ghost mecca.
Yeah.
That is where all like tons of spirits are there. And it just is like a constant home to the undead, basically.
Yeah.
It's way less evil.
Oh, no, yeah.
Way less evil.
And I do love this moment because Danny kind of calls BS on Dick. He's like, but you're scared of something here.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, nothing can hurt you here. It's like pictures from a book, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, you're scared of something. You're scared of room 237. Plug. What's in room 237?
Well, you're finding out right now, actually.
I want someone just to make an edit of when Danny looks at room 237 for the first time of just our voices muffled in the background talking.
Great. Oh, that'd be fantastic.
Oh, that'd be great.
Oh my goodness. Well, this scene is where I caught one of those movie errors.
What?
That bothered me the most. So, depending on which part of the scene you're watching, Danny has chocolate on his face, and sometimes he doesn't.
Oh, that's kind of...
It's a continuity error. Which is not something I would expect from a Kubrick film. I feel like he'd be so anal about everything that the kid would have to continue to at least have chocolate on his face during all parts of the scene. But in some parts of the scene, it'll cut to him and he has no chocolate on his face.
Well, maybe he just let Danny Lloyd do whatever he wanted.
I guess so. But that's where I was like, I thought this guy was supposed to be so freaking specific that he made people's lives hell. What is this?
I didn't even notice, so I'm kind of like...
I noticed.
I'm like, really?
Yeah, because I was like, oh my gosh, he's such a cute little kid. He's got chocolate on his face because he just ate chocolate ice cream. That's adorable. And then I was like, where's the chocolate?
Could have wiped his mouth between...
No, but then the next time we switched back...
Could have ate more chocolate.
Uh-huh, sure.
There. Debunked. She's giving me the finger. Soon you'll be able to see that happen in real time.
You will.
Next week. So...
supposed to.
We get our first Danny on the big wheel.
I like it. He's just adorable.
No, nothing really happens in this first one. He just kind of establishes it
that it does a weird loop there.
Yeah, like
the hotel does a weird loop there that doesn't make any sense. Basically,
it's meant to like confuse you on how the hotel is laid out because his route doesn't make that much sense.
No,
for a building.
Yeah,
it's very weird. Like I would get lost so easily.
Yeah.
But we then get like kind of a scene and Jack says something that is like very interesting. He says that when he showed up for his interview, he felt like he had been here before, but wait, he said in a quote, like, and this wasn't just simple deja vu. I felt like I've always been here. I think that also kind of spells it out.
Yeah.
A lot of this movie is very... I think the themes are more what people like really debate. Mm-hmm. Like, what does the movie like mean rather than what's actually going on?
Yeah.
But I just know that like for some reason, there's a lot of discourse about this film.
Yeah.
Some of it is straight up conspiratorial, hence the moon landing thing. I'll just briefly get into it. I don't know the finer details of the theory or what makes people believe this, but people believe that this movie contains Stanley Kubrick's confession to faking the moon landing.
What in the conspiracy is that?
I don't know. Who knows? It might be a pretty good theory.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to look into that because that
we are gonna watch a video essay later. That's
guess
for sure.
So. That's a thought.
Tuesday.
It's so funny because
there's a really big title card.
You like completely because Tuesday isn't for a minute here.
Well, what'd I miss?
The hedge maze shots. They're before Tuesday.
Whoops.
Yeah. So he's kind of wandering around the hotel and he looks at the miniature of the hedge maze, and immediately I'm turning to James and going, "Is this the actual miniature they used for these shots?"
And it's like,
probably.
And then it just pans into the shot that's famous for being a miniature.
Yeah. He's like, probably. Like, you know.
And then, but we do get the, but then like the music like gets all ramped up.
Yeah.
Like really intense, and it just flashes Tuesday.
Yes. It just, and I'm like, oh, Tuesday, so scary.
The title, the little time cards like showing you the passage of time. For the most part, it just kind of flashes black screen and says like 1 month later, or Monday, or the next day,
or 8 p.m. Like,
yeah, it's very random. They're like any kind of denomination of time except for years.
I think it's because, and it's because like showing the passage of time is hard when you're in such an enclosed space with not a lot of natural light. So like they're just trying to make it very clear that time is passing, because if you watch this movie without those cards, it would feel like time wasn't passing.
Yeah. I'm not calling them unnecessary or anything. I'm just saying like
no, they are just kind of like there.
The Tuesday one is the one that sticks out.
The Tuesday one is hilarious. It's like because the music like goes with it and it's very intense and it's like Tuesday, so scary. Like
The best part is we like it's not like we even knew what day of the week it was prior to that.
Yeah,
it just goes like Tuesday.
Tuesday. Oh, okay.
But then we have our second Big Wheel Adventure, and Big Wheel Adventure 2 ends with our first glimpse at Room 237.
Yes.
Stranger.
Yes. Which is, I keep bringing up the Stanley Hotel. I kind of like have a little bit of an obsession with the Stanley Hotel. I want to go really bad. But Room 237 is just changed from Room 217.
Yeah.
Which is the room that Stephen King stayed in when he dreamt the dream that made The Shining.
Yeah. And then the original, like in the book, it is Room 217 in the book as well.
Which is, it's so funny. There's a specific ghost that lives in that room. He's a cowboy, and he will like just kind of like stand on the edge of the bed and like look at you. If you're a man, if you're a woman, you don't want to stay in room 217, because he is known for touching women while they're asleep. This cowboy ghost. Other than that, he's pretty harmless, but
unfortunately, no cowboy ghost in this one.
No, when earlier in the movie when he goes, "What's in room 237?" I was like, the cowboy ghost.
I was confused. I didn't know about the cowboy ghost.
You don't know about the cowboy ghost?
So I was like, okay.
This is upsetting.
But
when watching this scene, this is where I go, oh, and James looks at me like, what did you just realize? I'm like, so that's the room he piled all the bodies in, right? Okay.
And I said, well, it's actually never confirmed, but I guess that is a fair inference to make.
I mean, it's the scary room. It's probably the room where the negative energy is like coming from.
Yeah.
Or like at least the room that has enough negative energy that these people with the shine can take something from it, which means there was probably a lot of death in there. So I would say,
yeah, that's fair.
It's where the chopped up bodies were.
We get our first hammy Jack moment, because he's this is when he's writing or trying to write.
Yeah.
And Shelley's such a sweetheart. She comes in asking if she can make him sandwiches. And he goes all Jack, all, "You're breaking my concentration. You're distracting me."
Yeah.
It'll then take me time to get back to where I was.
Mm-hmm.
me every time you say, we missed a thing.
Yeah, what's interesting about this monologue here is at the end of it, he's like, well, if you hear me typing or if you don't hear me typing, I'm working, leave me alone. Like that, the part about like, leave me alone, Jack Nicholson improvised the end of this line because he himself is a writer, and apparently these are things he knows because he said them to his girlfriend before.
Huh, Jack.
Huh,
nice
Jack.
self-report.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well, maybe he said them meaner in the movie.
he probably did. It
Like-
seems like he did.
I just love that. Whenever you hear me typing,
I'm working.
Well, the ending is the brutal part. Now, why don't you get the fuck out of here? She just kind of goes, okay. I'm like, oh,
She's the best.
it's just so unfair. But you know what? There's a storm coming. Snowstorm.
The snowstorm, and there's a missing person. I caught that, but I don't
I don't think
think
that's
it means
relevant.
anything.
And you know, it is nice because Danny and Wendy go out and play in the snow. Too bad they have Jack just Kubrick staring at them as they do it.
The funny part about it is I'm like looking at it, and we were talking about him staring, and I was like, he's not even doing it right. But that's where it came from.
Like that is when someone thinks of when someone says Kubrick stare, that's probably the picture they think of.
That's not right though. He's looking, his eye line is too high. Like you're supposed to be looking up, but your eye line can't be too high or else you don't look like it doesn't look right.
I think you're nitpicking.
I just have been told I do the Kubrick stare at people, and then they tell me I'm doing it wrong because my eye line is too high. So yeah, maybe I am nitpicking.
Is his eye line too high, or is the camera angle too low?
No, he's looking too high. It's where your eyes are. His eye line's too high.
Well, he's probably looking
Because
at them.
Later he does it right because his eye line is like up, but still like level. You know?
No.
But
For me, a Kubrick stare, whoever's telling you you're doing it wrong, for me, a Kubrick stare is as simple as blank, mouth agape, unblinking.
you don't understand. This is a whole thing, James. This is a whole thing. You can't just that doesn't make it a Kubrick stare. It's a whole technique.
Slow zoom as well.
It's a technique, and the camera has to also be in a specific place and zoom a specific way. This is a whole technique in making your character look like a psychopath.
Whatever you say.
Okay, whatever. Guess I'm crazy.
No. She's staring at me. But there's just a microphone in front of her nose, so I can't really see her face. We get our third big wheel after this. Danny, he's going through the hotel. This is the famous big wheel scene. This is
Yes.
like the one that people actually know.
And I was looking down and writing.
And I'm like, Ashton, look up. Ashton, look up. This is when he pulls up to and they're like,
Come play with us, Danny. Come play with us.
forever. Whoosh. Flashy image of death.
And ever.
Whoosh.
And ever.
Poor Danny. Because
Poor
he's just
Danny.
covering his eyes and freaking out. And he's like, Tony, I'm scared. Oh, man. But then, Tony's always there to help. He just goes, remember what Mr. Halloran said. They're just pictures in a book. They can't hurt you.
Red rope.
10 rams. But Jack just kind of keeps getting scarier.
Yes.
Because we then get a scene of Wendy and Danny are watching a TV show or a movie or something, and Danny really wants his fire truck to go play with.
Yeah.
And Wendy's like, your dad just went to, and this is another thing. She said, your dad just went to bed. And then, like, you were looking at it as daylight.
Yeah.
And then she says, okay, you know, just be quiet and I'll make lunch when you come back. So it's showing that Jack is not sleeping.
Yes.
He is straight up just staying awake through the night.
Yes.
Also,
the Mickey sweater he's wearing, not Jack, Danny. The Mickey sweater Danny is wearing is so freaking cute.
Buy one.
I kind of want to, yeah.
You might be able to find it. But this scene's so creepy because Jack's not asleep. He's just sitting on the end of the bed. And I don't know if this was my eyes playing tricks on me, but we get a shot from behind Jack's shoulder and you can see his face in the mirror. And it looks like he's smiling. It looks like he's like, come here a minute, Danny.
Yeah.
Like, let me see you.
Yeah.
But then it cuts to an actual picture, like an actual shot of his face, and he's just disheveled.
Yeah.
Like, basically looks miserable.
Right.
And he is so creepy in this scene. He's just holding on to Danny. He's like, you like it here, don't you, Danny? And he's like, I guess. And he's like, wouldn't you want to stay here forever and ever and ever? And Danny just kind of doesn't really reply to that. He just kind of goes, you would never hurt me or mommy, would you? Danny's onto it, okay?
Danny knows.
Danny knows. Dad is not well. But this also is starting to sow like the seeds of the conflict ahead because Jack's like, did your mother say something like that?
Right.
Did she say I was going to do something like that? Like,
Danny's like, no.
I'm going to go get my fire truck.
Yeah. It's like, okay.
And so I just love the progression of time in this movie because it felt so, the way Kubrick movies feel is the scenes are very long and drawn out.
Yeah.
But now as we're going back through the movie, we're like burning through it.
Yeah.
Because this, like, the progression is not this fast, like, as we're describing it.
Right.
And I wrote a lot of notes, so I know I don't think I'm missing anything important.
Right.
But, like, Jack is just continuously kind of getting beaten down, basically.
Yeah.
Like, in his own head.
The not sleeping thing kind of plays into, I wonder if there's, like, a theory out there, like, because if you stay awake consistently, I think it's 3 days, you start, like, going insane. And you start, like, seeing things and stuff, because Dolly used to stay awake for 3 days so he could paint those weird melting clocks.
What a guy.
He was something. So I wonder, like, does that play into it? But then we see Jack falling asleep at times, so maybe not. And could maybe all of them losing sleep be what is causing them to see what they're seeing? And causing them to go crazy.
In the next scene we're covering, he was asleep.
Yeah.
Because Danny, his curiosity gets the best of him. And he decides, yeah, I'll go to room 237. They rolled a ball at me.
Yeah.
That's cool. I don't think that's actually what his thought process is.
No, I think his thought process was, oh God, the door is open. I should go look.
And we don't see exactly what happens to Danny in there, really. But we do see Wendy just setting the boiler because she's the only one doing any work.
Yeah. Girl boss.
And Jack starts screaming.
Yes.
And like, it's kind of creepy how it like echoes through the hallways and stuff.
It's very frightening.
And it's these short like, oh, oh,
yeah.
oh. And she finds him slumped over on his desk, just kind of going, ah!
and fully screaming while asleep.
And I think this is the last time we see like the real Jack, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Because she wakes him up and he says, I had this horrible nightmare.
Yeah, he's like crying.
Like clearly very distraught.
Yes.
He had a nightmare that he killed them. He killed her and Danny. And he said, not just killed, chopped you into pieces.
Yeah.
And like his pure panic and fear of this being real is what tells me this is like the last we see of.
This is the last of like real him.
Yes.
That we see.
Because
and the thing is, we also don't know how long that sleep was. It does seem like maybe he dozed off for a couple seconds, fell into REM because he was dreaming, and immediately was pulled straight out of REM sleep.
But are you still going with the sleep theory?
I'm still going with the sleep theory because it kind of checks out because I think Danny's a different story. He's got his own shine thing going on. But
Wendy sleeps.
Yeah, but not for very long for the rest of the movie. She doesn't get much sleep, and then she starts seeing all the things.
So you're going that this is just sleep deprivation?
Could be.
So Dick's just a bullshitter.
No, I believe that Danny does have a shine or whatever. He's got a little something going on. He's a little bit,
yeah,
of a medium or something. And that Dick is the same way. He's got a sixth sense. But Jack and Wendy, not so much. And Jack and Wendy are the people we see who don't get sleep. Wendy gets a good amount of sleep in the beginning, but by the time Jack starts losing it, she starts having to stay awake to protect herself and Danny from Jack. And she doesn't get much sleep. And when she does get sleep, her sleep is then interrupted.
I mean, it's an interesting theory.
It's a theory. It's not exactly
a game theory.
It's not exactly what I think is going on, but it is a theory you could work on.
Because also you can just kind of think you don't typically see every sleep that someone takes in a movie anyway.
No. But we've been intentionally shown that Jack isn't getting sleep.
Yeah.
And I think as the time goes on and as things are getting more intense, that because she is worried about Jack, Wendy also isn't getting sleep.
Yeah.
It's a theory. It's not really what I think it's more is happening, but it's a theory that you could plausibly use to explain.
Out.
Yes.
Make a YouTube video about.
Yeah.
But I think it's more just like the line about, your father's just went to sleep thing at, presumably like 1 p.m. Is more just kind of a warning sign than anything else. But
this is just it's just a theory.
A game theory. But then we get, in my opinion, either the best or second best scene in the movie. And because Jack is blamed for Danny, because Danny comes back and he has marks on his neck.
Yes.
And Wendy, who is really concerned for Jack, immediately kind of turns around and goes, you did this. It was you. Don't come near him. And just runs away. And he, the look on his face, though, when it goes back to him and he's just sitting in the chair,
he's just like, what the fuck is happening?
But he gets up, just kind of wanders and keeps doing these
Well, I want to talk about the shot that happens here. Because I think this is probably my favorite shot in the movie, which is a lot to say about this movie. Because she doesn't just run away from him, she runs to Danny and starts holding Danny and starts yelling at him. And the shot goes from behind Jack. showing Danny and Wendy as a unit away from him and showing us that is where it becomes a Jack against them situation. And I think it's shot so well because we see how quickly Jack is alienated and taken out of the group. And it just shows that separation in the moment as it's happening so perfectly with just the shot happening from behind Jack there.
Stay close, stranger. The room awaits you after these messages.
It's really good.
No,
I think it's
agree.
amazing movie work.
I was just listening to your astute analysis.
Yeah.
But then we get to, in my opinion, one of the best scenes. And that's Jack he wanders to the gold room, which is like the ballroom.
Yeah.
And I love the way he's like walking down the hallway and he just keeps doing this like frantic arm movements. Like,
yeah.
He looks like he is already like having a psychotic episode.
Yeah.
Because he is. It's started at this point.
Yes.
And he goes and sits at the bar and he's basically just kind of quietly begging to himself, like I would do anything for a drink, anything for just a glass of beer. There's no alcohol in the building.
We didn't clarify this earlier, but they made a point of it.
Yes. That they take all the booze
away.
For basically liability.
Yeah, basically.
Insurance is cheaper that way.
Yeah.
And Jack, I just love the shot where he like looks up from his hands, like has his palms on his hand. He like looks up, drops his hands with this like grin. He's just like, "Hi, Lloyd." Like, kind of dead tonight, isn't it?
Huh. Laughs like a freak.
And then there's Lloyd. There's just a bartender in a full stock bar now. And Lloyd's just like,
Lloyd,
yes, sir.
And on your theory that only some of the ghosts are like actual ghosts and other ones are made up by the hotel, Lloyd is made up by the hotel.
Oh no, Lloyd is the hotel.
Lloyd is the hotel.
That is the hotel speaking to him.
Because it's made so clear. Like there's a clear, distinct difference between like how Lloyd acts and talks and what's the right word? Is with Jack and how other ghosts like Grady interact.
And it also makes sense. And I'm going to try my absolute hardest because I think this corroborates the theory. This makes sense, and I'm trying not to spoil Dr. Sleep at all. But the job, the hotel seems to be filling jobs.
Yes.
Grady is now a butler.
Yes.
And one of the jobs that we see is not filled yet is the bartender. So the bartender is just being done by the hotel.
Yes.
And Lloyd, he is the finest bartender from Timbuktu to Portland, Maine, or Portland, Oregon, for that matter. He will just stare into your soul and listen to you talk about your problems.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I'm sure that's how I sometimes interact with bar guests who are acting like this.
Just kind of smugly grin at them and just go, "Of course, sir."
Uh-huh. Yeah, sure, of course, yeah. Mm-hmm. That was funny. That was a really good. You laughed really hard about that.
I love when he like slaps his pocket and he's like, "I just happen to have 2 20s and 2 10s right here in my wallet. Thought they were gonna be in there until next April." But then he immediately like pulls out his wallet later and he's like, "I seem to be a little light." Like, were you lying?
Probably. Correct. Yes.
How's my credit in this joint? Your credit's fine, Mr. Torrance. But just the scene is basically just kind of watching Jack lose his mind.
I would have loved, because I know it doesn't like put you in the story as much, but wouldn't it have been so cool to have a pull away shot
of him like talking
to himself?
Yes, I'm glad they didn't.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think it actually like adds to the story at all, but it would have been a cool freaking shot.
It would have been a cool shot, but I like just kind of only seeing it through the point of view of the character we are currently following.
Because you're not, because that wouldn't put you into this, like, it would totally lose the fear factor. I feel like you lose the ability to feel like you're going insane with the character.
And I think there's something refreshing about this movie compared to like modern horror, because I think like if say this movie was made today by like Blumhouse, I bet Lloyd would like turn around and he'd be like rotting or like like there'd be some scary jump scare.
Yeah, no, he would have uncovered his eyes and then Lloyd would have been like, "Hello, sir," and you would have been like, "Ah!" Like, you know.
This movie has so much restraint, but at the same time, it's so like heavy.
Yes,
like
horror isn't what makes you jump. It isn't what makes you like clutch your pearls. It's deep-seated. It's something that should prey on your deep-seated fears.
Yes.
And that's what this movie invokes. That's what the movies that we have tended to really love on this podcast do, rather than a Blumhouse film that mostly is the going through a haunted house.
Because like I just like if we were gonna do an episode on like I don't know, Insidious. I love that movie. That's maybe not a great example.
That's not a good example.
I'm trying to think. Any nameless, just kind of jump scare fest movie. I don't know what we'd talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, the scary guy, he jumped out. It was scary. This character died.
The purpose of those films, I guess, is different.
They're thrill rides.
They're thrill rides. They're intended to be like going through a haunted house. The way the criticism I have to where those Blumhouse type movies start becoming something that's, I guess, problematic is where we get the where we get Exorcist Believer, where it's meant to be a story that preys on your deep-seated fears, and they made it into a movie that is like walking through a haunted house.
And there's a place for that, but when you have an expectation, whether you think it's going to get lived up to or not, because I didn't, it's still just going to make the experience worse. When if it was just a fun horror movie called like Believer, I don't know, I might have liked it more.
It's that Blumhouse's, I think, point of a movie, or what they think gives their movie success, is if they walk into into the movie theater and people are jumping and screaming.
Yeah.
But like when we're talking about The Exorcist, people weren't jumping and screaming. They were slowly backing out of the theater because they thought, or no, that was Alien, actually. People were slowly backing out of the theater because they thought the thing on the screen was going to get them.
You just don't see that these days anymore.
Yeah, we're less easily scared.
It is also part of it.
Yes.
But speaking of running and jumping, Wendy comes running and jumping into the gold room, and she's saying that there's someone else in the hotel. There's an old woman that tried to strangle Danny.
Yeah.
And Jack just kind of goes, "Are you out of your fucking mind?" Says the guy who just,
talk to nobody.
Yeah. Had an imaginary bartender friend.
He's drinking imaginary Jack right now.
Yeah. Jack is drinking Jack.
Yeah, he is. Product placement.
But he nevertheless, he agrees to go check it out.
Yeah.
Go check it out. It's from later in the movie.
Yeah.
But see, this scene is also very famous.
Randomly. Did it also bother you that the sign for the gold room looks like it says the cold room?
I didn't notice.
You didn't know the G isn't completed. Like it looks like a C.
I did not notice.
I don't know if that's on purpose or something, if that's supposed to mean something.
What was the sign made of?
It's just the little, like...
Oh, I think it was probably just the Art
it.
Deco font making it look a little funky.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know. It's a fucking Kubrick film. It could mean something.
Yeah, that's fair.
I just wanted to point it out because I wrote it in my notes because I was like, when they were doing the tour, I was like, oh, it's called the cold room because it's cold outside.
And then this is the gold room.
And I was like,
what?
Oh, I guess I could say gold. Okay.
Old lady. Jack goes into room 237 to check it out.
Yes. But first we get the glimpses of, because I think that's before this, right? Yeah. Oh, something else. Sorry. I'm re-looking at my notes because I got lost in them. Something I noticed he says to the bartender is, it's the white man's burden. I don't know if it's because he's talking about his wife, but white man's burden is like a historical document thing that was basically like, it is us, the white men, that are supposed to lead all these people who are indigenous to their lands and are fucking dumb, basically, to become civilized humans and make civilization happen. Don't know how that has any context to what Jack is going through.
I don't think it does.
I could be random, ranting and insanity happening. I just thought it was interesting that it was mentioned, and then there's a racism tone that kind of randomly just pops up in the middle of this movie for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
It doesn't feel like it goes anywhere or means anything, but...
No, I don't think it does. I don't think that's meant to be read into too deeply. But who knows?
Yeah. But anyway,
old lady.
No, before the old lady, still. Sorry. We flash into Dick's house. And
You remember this because you wrote boobies.
Yes, actually. Yes, I did. He has some beautiful black women up on his walls. And also his feet are showing because I wrote ew feet. But basically, he's kind of watching the television and has a shine. And we're supposed to, I think, figure out that is Danny trying to reach out to him and contact him. I did not figure that out. I was just like, oh, he senses something wrong with the hotel.
Oh, that's Danny trying to get a hold of him.
Yeah. But
Danny's also seizing out.
Yes. Never mind, I did figure it out. Or no, I just thought it was something wrong with the hotel that was making the Shine people freak out.
No, I think because later we
figured it out. We figured it out later, but I just thought that was the two of them. Yes, and I wrote boobies in my notes.
Anyway, the old lady scene.
Yes.
Oh man, Jack does go to check out room 237. There's a pretty naked lady that comes out of the bathtub.
And I wrote, oh, more boobies.
And then Jack's like, yeah.
I'm going to hit that. It's exactly what he thinks.
And they start making out, and she turns into a rotting old lady. Scary. Yeah.
It
is actually pretty gross.
It actually is done pretty effectively. The prosthetics making her look rotted are pretty good.
They're gnarly, actually.
They're pretty gnarly. I will always be a proponent for what's the right word I'm looking
practical
for?
Effects?
Yes, thank you. Practical effects.
Well, good thing CGI didn't exist yet.
Well, yeah, that's why these movies feel like more intense and more like real to me because practical effects like work better for my brain.
But I love how Jack comes back and he's like, I didn't see anything. Because now he's a professional gaslighter.
Yeah.
But he's basically like, I think Danny did it to himself. That's all that makes sense.
Yeah.
That'd be... You must be crazy or something. But anyway, Jack crashes out. He gets all angry.
Yep.
And he goes back to the gold room.
Yep.
And now it's full of people and it's a party.
It's a party.
And I want to be there.
He does not question it whatsoever.
He just goes back up to the boys like, hey, Lloyd. And then this part bothered me. You know, Lloyd's like, what'll it be? And he's just like, first he said the hair of the dog thing.
The hair of the dog that
like,
bit me.
Bourbon on the rocks. And I'm like, but then he pulls out Jack Daniels. That's Tennessee whiskey. That's not whiskey. Bourbon.
It's not bourbon. I'm just saying it's the product placement they got for this movie. It's definitely product placement.
So it's either product placement or they couldn't resist giving Jack.
I mean, we'll see. I mean, I'd have to look that up to find out.
Yeah, but as Jack, you know, he takes his drink and he starts boogieing. He's going to get into the party.
He does do a little boogie.
His stupid butler, you know, the help, just flings the drinks all off his tray, all into Jack's fancy fleece.
It's so evidently purposeful, though.
I know, it's great.
It is like... So, this butler is like walking around with this tray, and it's like he sees Jack and immediately starts walking towards him and absolutely on purpose goes like this, like flips his hand with the tray.
And I love, you know, he's like, oh, let's wash you off in the bathroom. It'll be better if we apply some water. Yeah. And this is where we learn through a very like chilling conversation.
Yes.
That this is Grady.
And it's like we almost see flashes of real Jack in this conversation.
Yeah, he's like
he's starting to crack.
He's realizing, wait a minute, this doesn't add up. You're supposed to be dead.
Yeah.
As if anything else he saw isn't normal.
It's kind of like it's like, because I'm not a psychologist, so I can't really say for sure, but like how you can find things that are real in a delusion that just makes you grab harder onto the delusion. So it's like he found something that's real, and instead of breaking his psychosis or breaking his delusion here, it just makes him grab onto it harder.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I love Jack's delivery throughout this entire thing.
It's
He's
so
like,
good.
Mr. Grady, didn't you kill your wife?
He's like, oh, I'm at a dinner party. I have to be non-confrontational and smooth with my words. Didn't you kill your wife and kids and chop them up into little bits?
I don't seem to recall doing that. But we kind of find out he's either BSing or now he remembers. Mr. Grady gets real scary because he's like, no, your boy Danny has a great talent and he's using that talent against you. Like
playing into his fear, his how he feels he's failed as a father.
Yes. And this is where the random racism comes in, because they describe the man as a
N-word with the hard R.
Yes.
Which is always so weird to hear someone with a little bit of an accent saying it.
The thing is, when Grady says it and then Jack, confused, like, says it back.
Yes.
It's like, oh, a blank? It's like he's like, what? He has to explain that the cook, you know,
yeah,
he uses a different word, but you know, and he basically tells Jack, is like, you know, my daughter tried to burn down this hotel and I corrected her. And then when my wife tried to stop me from correcting her, I corrected her as well. And it's so eerie just using corrected as a replacement for chopped into tiny pieces.
Yeah. And it's very much like...
It's depersonalizing it.
It's interesting to see the hotel and its forever guests manipulating him and playing on his own personal worst fears. Because using that language makes him feel vindicated, I guess is the right word. And
a lot of this is just really interesting because the way I understand it is the hotel hungers. It wants people who shine in it. And that's also why I still think Jack shines.
Yeah.
Because it wants him specifically so badly.
My note here says, dude, he killed his family. Maybe don't listen to him. You just pointed this out, my dude.
But, you know, he takes it to heart, though. It's because I love when Grady finally kind of just goes, I was never the caretaker. You have always been the caretaker. And I kind of just love how you can't tell if this is the hotel manipulating him or if there is some kind of spectral, this is always where you were going to go kind of thing, you know?
Right.
Because is it destiny or is this just the hotel manipulating?
Yeah. That's a question, like, you know, you can sit on for a really long time.
Exactly. There's not a right answer.
No.
Red rum.
Red rum.
Red rum.
Red rum.
Red rum. Danny starts having a red rum fit in his bed.
Red rum.
Well, I guess Tony starts having a red rum fit in his bed. I love the next little portion of this movie. The next like 5-ish minutes is getting every single detail of Dick Halloran's travel.
Yeah.
He like calls. There's a family staying there, and I just need you to check on them. I'll call back in 20 minutes. They try to call. No one answers. Well, the phone lines are dead, actually, because Jack took out the radio's dead, because Jack took out some components.
The radio is working, but then Jack hears them trying to contact.
That's right.
And he pulls apart the radio.
Yes. Then I presume he waits 20 minutes. He then calls again.
He's like, hey,
it's me, Dick Halloran again. Like,
he's so nice.
He is so nice.
Dick is so kind.
Like, and they're like, oh, we couldn't get a hold of him, so they're probably either, you know, just too far away to hear or just not available right now. He's like, oh, well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
You know, try. It's like, we'll try again tomorrow.
Right. I'll give you a call back later.
Then he's on a plane.
And he's still being so incredibly kind to the people around him.
Excuse me, Mrs. When will we be landing in Denver? At about 8:20. Okay. And then he lands in Denver. And then he's in the airport. And he calls his friend, and he's like, hey, he explains like the whole situation, but he kind of lies about it. He's like, and then he's like, I just need to get up there. What's the weather like?
Yeah.
Oh, it's pretty bad. Roads are up to that mountain are going to be completely covered. Well, I guess I'm going to need to borrow a snowcat. You think you could set that up for me? Like, it's literally every little detail of his travel.
And I think really it's just to show
how far he went, and how calm he was able to keep himself, and how kind he was to everyone. Yeah.
In that, I almost feel like there's a Christian parallel here. I almost feel like there's something there, but I don't know what it is. So I'm not really going to say, but I almost feel there's something about this character that is good and kind to everyone he meets.
That's why I love Dick.
He is good.
Halloran.
The whole point of his character is to be the one who explains the shine and to be kind. And I feel like that means something. But I can't put my finger on it. So I'm just going to say that it means something and eventually figure it out.
Maybe next week. And
Red rum.
This is where we get there's so many what I would call best scenes in this movie, because this is probably what I would call actually the best scene. Wendy tells Danny, to keep watching cartoons. I'm gonna go talk to your dad. I'll be back in 5 minutes. I feel like it would take 5 minutes just to get all the way down there, but that's just me. And he's not at the desk, but she takes this opportunity to go see what he's been writing. And I feel so bad for the PA who had to probably do all this.
Well, what I love about this. So first she pulls it out of the typewriter and it just says, all work and no play makes
all work no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Yeah, all work no play makes Jack a dull boy. Over and over and over again. And when she looks through all of his pages, it looks like he's been writing a book, but he's been writing the same sentence over and over again. Like there's different paragraph structures and different sentence structures. Sometimes it ends with an exclamation point. Sometimes it ends with a period.
Sometimes he's making diamonds.
Yes. He's very clearly thinking he's writing something, but he's been writing the same sentence over and over and over and over. And I just gotta say, that's trying to write something for you. Yeah. But also, it plays into it's the delusion. He has been in his mind writing a book this whole time. Oh, it's so cool.
It just makes me think every time he's at the typewriter, is that all he's doing?
That's all he's been writing.
I still feel so bad for the PA who had to write all these pages.
I kind of want to go back to the scene where he has the meltdown at the typewriter.
I don't think you can see it.
And see if we could see it. I don't think you can, but I almost want to just to see.
Just to see.
Because that would be so cool.
I feel like I would have seen that. That would have been definitely something I remember hearing.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Who knows? I mean, that's a little bit more of a newer thing, I think, in more this day and age, that you hide stuff like that in your movie, more clues.
Yeah.
I guess. More breadcrumbs. And I don't think this movie really wanted breadcrumbs that much. So take it as you will, but that would have been really cool.
Yeah. And then then we see a shot creeping behind her while she's snooping. Mm-hmm. And Jack just kind of gives her the old, do you like it? And Jack's line delivery throughout this whole scene is so good. Just the way he just kind of goes, what are you doing down here?
Yeah.
But this is the infamous scene that they shot an ungodly amount of times that broke Shelley Duvall down to her core, because they kept doing it over and over and over and over and over. And that shot is from the typewriter all the way up to the stairs, over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And it's basically, this is the big crack. This is the I am now your enemy.
Yes.
I am going to kill you.
Right.
Moment.
Well, he's already had his moment of thinking that it's them against him. This is where they realize it's them against him.
It's more dire than, they might have thought.
Yes.
And it's showing how selfish that Jack is in this moment. Because all he's thinking about is, you've never considered anything that I've ever felt. that I've ever wanted to do. You know, you've ruined my life. It's all your fault.
You're to blame.
He's like, I think maybe he should be taken to a doctor. You think maybe he should be taken to a doctor. He just kind of keeps just mimicking her, basically.
Yes.
Stay close, stranger. The room awaits you after these messages.
And when do you think Danny should be taken to a doctor? As soon as possible. As soon as possible. It's like some of Jack's lines, like when you think about them, are funny.
Mm-hmm.
But when you just kind of watch the scene, it's horrifying.
Because you're watching someone break.
Yeah.
You're watching someone go through psychosis.
And you're watching probably one of the most horrific moments of someone's life.
Yes. For sure.
On the other end.
For real, for sure.
But hey, Shelley don't fuck around.
Shelley is carrying this movie.
Because Jack is going up the stairs all, give me the bat.
Yeah.
Give me the bat.
Windy darling.
Light of my life.
Light of my life.
But she cracks him over the skull with the bat.
Yeah.
And it's pretty baller. But she drags him by herself all the way to the kitchen.
Yeah.
And locks him in the walk-in closet pantry thing.
Well, yeah.
Guess only frozen and refrigerated foods if you were planning on just keeping him there. But I love when he gets up and he tries everything to get out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's like, well, forget this whole thing ever happened. You know, if you just let me out. And then he switches to, you hit my head really hard.
I think I need to go see a doctor. I'm dizzy.
And then
goes absolutely nutso off the wall.
Yeah. And Wendy's like, I'm taking Danny in the snowcat and I'll send a doctor for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, and this is my favorite, just when he's just like, there's a big surprise for you. Go check out the snowcat. Go check it out. Yeah, he ripped something important looking out of the snowcat.
Yeah. Looked like something. I don't know cars.
I don't know how engines work.
I don't know.
Whatever he ripped out, it was probably important. I'm like, oh man, this is like the meat of the movie right here.
Right.
But she just kind of leaves him locked in there and then goes to bed. I guess what else are you gonna do? Maybe not go to bed, but I understand. You'd probably think there's no possible way he could get out. But little did she know, the hotel will just let him out.
Yeah.
Because Mr. Grady is basically first kind of calls him a wimp.
Yeah.
He's like,
he falls asleep in there too. And I go, what did I write down? Because it was so funny.
I liked the open jar of peanut butter and Oreos and stuff.
I said, now, Jack, you shouldn't sleep with a concussion.
But he does get out.
Mm-hmm.
The hotel essentially lets him out.
Yeah, Grady lets him out.
And because
I think
when Danny, go ahead.
Sorry, I think what happens here, because the interaction between the two of them is, well, you've failed at this, so why would I even care? What you're not going to correct them, whatever. And he doesn't let him out until Jack says no, I do it. I won't mess up this time. I promise. I promise I'm going to get it right this time. I think it's interesting. I think what the hotel decides to do here is not only try to play into Jack to get him to to get to their final goal, and maybe try to get 3 more people to stay here, 4 even with Dick.
Yeah.
if they can't get to that goal because Jack's not going to go through with it, they might as well just let him rot in there and get one more person. That's what the hotel decides to do here, I think.
But Jack essentially shows his passion,
his worth.
Because he basically says, like, I look forward to nothing more than correcting them, you know? And Danny is kind of waltzing around the room while Wendy's sleeping. He's just going, rad, He picks up the knife. Looks like he's about to cut himself with it.
Yeah, I literally flinched. I thought he was going to cut himself. I was like, no, but that's written in like lipstick. There's no way it's written in blood. It doesn't look like it's written in blood.
But it's okay because he walks over and he grabs lipstick and he writes red rum on the door in funny backwards letters.
Yep.
And then he just starts screaming, red rum! Red rum!
Red rum!
And she gets up, takes the knife out of his hand because
there's a child with a knife,
and then and we get a nice Kubrick zoom on the red rum spelling murder when it's reflected in a mirror. Spooky. But this is when Jack starts bashing the first door open with an axe, and underrated moment. No one talks about it. He sticks his head into that hole and he says, I'm home.
Wendy, I'm home.
and of course, I don't even know if I need to talk about this scene this much. It's extremely iconic. They barricade themselves in the bathroom. She's able to get Danny out the window to slide down like a snowbank that build up all the way to the window, but she can't get out. She can't fit. So she's hiding against the corner, and everyone knows how it goes.
Yeah.
Axe swing, screaming, axe swing, screaming, axe swing, screaming.
What's funny about this scene is that they initially had made a door that was like of a lighter material that would break easier, but Jack Nicholson was a volunteer fire marshal for a while. So then they had to just put like an actual door there.
Was he just obliterating the door?
Completely obliterating the door. Like he would go to swing through it and the whole door would fall apart. So they had to put a stronger door because he actually knew how to break down doors with
That's awesome.
With an axe. So that's pretty cool.
Well, he breaks down the door, and obviously we get, here's Johnny.
Which almost didn't make the movie. Fun fact.
Yes. And it's a good thing it did.
Yep.
Now, it's kind of become one of the most parodied things
Johnny.
ever. But that's okay. And, she is saved by the snowcat starts approaching.
Yes.
Because Dick is in town. And, this is kind of one of those movie conveniences, but he just leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he probably had plenty of time to, like, keep doing what he was doing.
Right, but I think he just decided, new person who doesn't know I'm on a murderous rampage?
Cool.
They're going to be so much easier to kill.
And man, that's the biggest bummer. We do get this kind of tense scene with Dick walking through the hallway really slowly.
Yeah.
And Jack just pops out from behind a pillar, swings and kills him.
Yeah.
Once.
It's so upsetting.
And that's one thing that I know that Stephen King didn't like as well, because Dick lives in the book. This doesn't happen in the book.
Oh my God.
So
Dick died for no reason?
Kind of, yeah.
Oh.
Probably just to get a kill in the movie.
Yeah.
Honestly. But I kind of like how we spend so much time with Dick and his journey to get there to help. And
just
it sets
for him
up
to
that
die.
he's going to be the savior of the day. And then he dies immediately.
Yeah.
When he gets there.
Yeah.
It's very tragic.
Yeah.
And also probably pretty realistic.
Yeah.
Like, unfortunately.
Yeah. Because I was like sitting there thinking, what is he going to do? Like, how is he even going to help at this point?
And this is when Dick dies, Danny, we get a close up of him like screaming, but we don't hear it.
Mhm.
Well, like you can faintly hear it, but Jack hears him. So he's like, he rises up really creepy in front of the camera. Yeah. And this is when Jack, from now on, all he knows how to say is, Danny, Danny boy.
Like, literally, that's the only thing he knows how to say, because he, other than that, speaks complete and total gibberish.
Yeah, at this point, he's just kind of going, oh.
I think he is suffering from massive head trauma at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And also, he can't walk straight.
Yeah.
He has a limp now.
Yeah.
And he's chasing Danny all throughout the hotel, and then he chases him outside into the hedge maze. But meanwhile, Wendy's going through her own little vision quest through the hotel. She's like going up some stairs. The first thing she sees, and I still don't understand it, is presumably
Pooh Bear?
Winnie the Pooh giving a rich man
a blowy with his pants.
Yeah, like
off.
You can't really tell exactly, but that's pretty much what's happening.
Yeah, it didn't make much sense to me, but it would be frightening.
Yeah, it would be something. But this is where Shelley gets to do her like best panic faces, because every time she sees something, it then closes up on her face going like, and then she goes downstairs and sees the Colorado room looking all abandoned and full of skeletons.
Yes.
And then makes the face.
Yes.
And she backs away and runs into a guy in a tux
with his head
cracked open, and he just goes, "Great party, isn't it?"
Yeah.
And then she sees the blood elevator.
Yes.
And that's pretty much the rest of her journey through this movie.
Meanwhile,
fact, Danny,
blood elevator was shot in 3 takes.
They did that 3 times?
They did it 3 times. Apparently, Kubrick is known, well, obviously, because we've been talking about Shelley, but he's known for taking 12,000 takes, but he was happy with the blood elevator take in 3, which is great, because the shot took 9 days to set up.
Ow.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yes.
But Danny has a little bit more going on because he's getting chased through the maze. But Danny is a little genius. The way he gets Jack off his tail is he starts literally retracing his footsteps.
Yes.
Jack is following his footsteps in the snow. And he hides away in a corner, and once Jack comes to the end, he doesn't know where to go, so he just kind of wanders off in a random direction, going, Danny!
Yeah. and Danny just follows his footsteps back out of the hedge maze.
And he finds his mom at the Snowcat, and they start driving off. And Jack, hearing the Snowcat driving, starts having a bit of a conniption.
Yes.
And what I'm guessing is a combination of the head trauma, the leg injury, exhaustion, and freezing temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
He falls over.
Yes.
And we cut to that picture.
That one.
You know, that picture. He's him frozen in a snowbank, you know.
It's a little too comical.
Yeah, well, it's been memed to death,
yeah.
Unfortunately. It's still funny, I think, on its own.
It is like way too comical, but that's okay.
The sudden cut to it is scary because you're like, oh.
Oh, for me, I was like, okay.
But I'm just kind of realizing now how abruptly this movie kind of does end.
Yeah, it just
because he's dead. We go into the hotel and we get probably the most analyzed and theorized about shot, and that is the slow zoom onto a picture on the wall of the 4th of July ball in 1921 with front and center Jack Torrance.
Jack Torrance, yep.
And me I think it's just kind of metaphorical, if that makes sense.
That's where the hotel keeps its collection.
Yes. And that is basically showing, kind of illustrating, yes, Jack has been the caretaker the whole time. This was where he was meant to be.
Yep.
And credits.
Yeah. With spooky music.
Midnight and the stars and you. That was The Shining.
That was The Shining.
And that is a wrap
on the first season of Room 237. Can't believe we're here already.
I know. It kind of crept up. It kind of just happened.
Yeah. It's really insane.
And I'm super excited for next season. It's going to get wacky. We're going to try some new things. We're going to be on camera. Hoping to more reliably do Q&A and other segments.
And not blabber too much. And I have to cut it. Yeah.
Yeah. But just thank you all for listening so far to this little passion project that we've put together here at Jumperscape. And
we love it. We have so much fun. We have so much fun talking to you guys and like honestly getting to know you through all these Q&As and through the Discords and the other events that we have going on. We're really excited to keep doing it, and it's so weird that we're already done with the first season.
But hey, no rest. No rest for the wicked.
Nope.
We'll be back next week.
Live and in color.
With Dr. Sleep. And if you want to give me your own shining theories, you can go to discord.gg/Jumperscape, and you can talk to us anytime. And when we bring the Q&A back next season, you can ask any question you like. Doesn't even have to be horror movie related. You can literally ask what our preferred breakfast is.
Yeah.
If you want.
We'll answer it.
If you've liked this first season of the show, you can also support it, help it keep going. If you go to patreon.com/Jumperscape, we love everyone there. You guys are our rock. And
yeah, for real.
Patron of the week. I don't know. They change their name so often. So I'm just going to say Slipstream. You know who you are.
Killing it.
You are a patron of the week this week, so
made
thank you.
Made me question my sanity last week, but that's okay.
Yeah, me too. I still don't know. But thank you so much for listening. This is just the beginning. Goodbye from Room 237.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us this evening, stranger. If you enjoyed your time with us, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/Jumperscape or join the community at discord.gg/Jumperscape. We thank you for your listenership and hope you enjoyed.